Um, yeah, I don't really have any plan for what to say. But it's funny how words really do fail because it's like I finally, I mean, something drops and and all you are is here, still here. And I think, Angelo said that at this point, unbinding tends to be just energetic. And that's what I'm finding. It's not so much a practice. I mean, meditation is great. Being bored is great because when you're bored, he said a wonderful thing at this online retreat, which is that when you think you're bored and you think you have to go and fidget or watch a video or do something, ask yourself, is it because not enough is happening or too much is happening? And very often, it's pretty clear once you tune in, too much is happening. There's sensations in your guts or in your chest or in your arms or in your fingers that are like, I mean, think about when you're feeling bored or when you're like don't want to sit down and sit on the meditation cushion. What are you actually feeling? It's usually, for me, it's a terrible restlessness and just allowing the restlessness to be restlessness can feel excruciating. I mean, there's some kind of block in your mind of like, um, I got to do something else. I'm bored. This is stupid. But an ability to be with yourself, be with your own living, complex, vast, unpredictable body and appreciate whatever is actually there. It makes such a huge difference. There's so many things, even like sitting down to write a book or whatever, it's the same thing. You can just feel like this restlessness. And and the restlessness is solved by distractions or compulsions. Sitting down to meditate, setting aside time to exercise, even playing with your kids can feel, for me, it can feel difficult because it's like, no, there's something else I should be doing. There's something else I should be doing. And it's like, no, actually, this is the best thing you can do right now. But your body doesn't feel like it. Your body still has patterns that want to preserve themselves. And they preserve themselves because they think they're keeping you safe. And they preserve themselves by not letting you grow. As long as you stay distracted, you're in your safe place. Maybe it's a miserable place, but at least it feels safe and comfortable and familiar. And it feels known. It feels known, and it's an illusion because you still don't know what's going to happen in the next minute. But you you think it's exerting control to keep yourself distracted and stuck. And even if you know that you're only perpetuating an illusion, and that's what can get really painful at this point because you don't believe it anymore and it's still stuck in your body. And that sort of dichotomy is really painful. It's really, you feel like you're being ripped in half, pulled in different directions, and even more stuck than ever, and more and suffering more than ever. Luckily, by now I've been through enough rounds of similar things that even when I'm feeling despair, there's something that's breathing through that. And I know, even if I don't feel it yet, I know and I believe that all I need to do is allow it as much as I can, as much as I'm able. And as much as I'm able is good enough. It's not always going to be quick. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to look anything like I thought it would. Sometimes I can feel myself tensing up against some kind of next step or next growth or next release. And I know I can't will it. It's not in my power necessarily to just say, stop doing that, stop being there, stop existing. It's not how things work. You have to allow the things you most don't want to allow. Whether it's, you get down deep to something like a longing for oblivion, and you think, I can't allow that. Because either I'll reveal myself as lazy and ungrateful, or I might actually harm myself. Um, I know I'm not going to harm myself because it's like if there's one iron law for me, it's not to take my own life. And it's kind of, yeah, not something I would just do because I feel bad. And I'm not saying, I'm not trying to belittle anyone who feels truly awful, truly at the end of any last rope. But feelings are temporary. And harming yourself can be not temporary. And yeah, but still allowing that feeling for me was helpful because it released a knot of tension. It released a knot of denial because those feelings are there. And allowing feelings is not the same as acting on them. And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but just this morning I was making pancakes for the kids, and some truly horrible feeling was arising. And, I resisted the urge to tamp it down by eating something or going online or, any number of ways you can try to tamp these things down. But I just opened myself to it completely. Just stood there for a few seconds, maybe a minute, I don't know. Opened myself up to it completely. And it was just like a big, like almost like an oil slick or something, passing over a body of clean water. Um, it arose, it passed all the way over, and then it was gone. I have no idea what it was. Um, but prior to that, yeah, I did Angela's online retreat that just finished yesterday, and it was mostly just in the thick of shadow stuff, which I keep trying to. Something in me keeps trying to hope that um, I can just get done with this, move on, be finished. But I'm learning not to try to rush. Let me see if I can find what I wrote. I can feel myself being booted out of the virtual world and into the real one. And what does that mean? That means it's a feeling of losing an imaginary playground as big as the universe and being stuck in one body in one place on one planet. But of course, that's not the end of the story. But it seems like a necessary part of the story, like a portal. Really, really paying more attention to this embodied life, the the the, the inputs that are tangible, for lack of a better word. Recognizing thoughts as a tool, a friend sometimes. A VR headset you can put back on if you want. You can still get lost in thought. I can still get lost in thought. But you take the headset off, you fully recognize there's an eternal moment here. It fluctuates endlessly and not always how your mind imagines or plans or hopes or thinks or whatever. Um, and trusting that. I mean, it's hard to trust it because, I didn't like my childhood. I didn't want to be there. It was bland, it was lonely. I felt like a nobody. Who I was not interesting to anyone. Was not even allowed, really. I wasn't given a chance. So now what I'm trying to do is give myself a chance. And it brings up all the deep fear and dread and shame and hate, rage. Layers and layers and layers and layers of it. You think you've gotten somewhere, and I mean, I have. I've gotten so far, and then it can just feel like being smacked right down to step one when you reach another layer, and it's just so strong. And your capacity grows stronger too, and also your insight and perspective. So it's not as bad as it could be, but it's not easy. One little thing, one little thought holds on, one little belief holds on, and it can make things so much harder. A belief like, this shouldn't take this long. This shouldn't be this hard. I should be past this. I thought I was at X level instead of Y level. Levels, like, there are maps, but they're very crude compared to the vast lived experiences of the vast diversity of human beings. It can feel very much like you want to allow everything and you're doing your best to allow everything, but some little niggling belief is it makes you feel like a cat that someone's trying to put into a carrier, like scratching and clawing and stiff arming reality, like, no, 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 no. Or an ancient fear can disguise itself as safety or wisdom, and you can believe that. I don't even know who the heck is believing anything, to be honest. It's very confusing. But I think, Angelo says trying to figure it out is like when you get into quicksand, like getting deeper into the quicksand to try to figure out how to get out of the quicksand. Like, so yeah, I mean, like, it's not just disorienting. It's like, what even is orientation? I don't even know what orientation means. That's how deep the disorientation can get. You're like, orient, who's orienting to what? What does orienting mean? What does that mean? You just get really, really, I just got really, really lost, so lost. And, you know, adding new arrows to the lostness. Like, I shouldn't be lost at this point. Little fingers of pride, still trying to be the good student who never messes up, always gets A plus. Good luck with that in the real world. Yeah, and I wrote there's a feeling of I'm like Pinocchio becoming a real boy because it's like I'm really I mean, once you're here, you're like you're fully embodied in this moment, and your mind can chatter about it, but you're not withdrawing back into the mind world. You recognize it as chatter, as blah blah blah. It's a wonderful tool. I'm very grateful for it, but it's not a great master, and that's the difference. So, once and I can't spend all of my time yet in this embodied state where I feel like I'm life sized and um, fully immersed without any pretense of an idea that I know what's going to happen next. I can't spend all my time there yet, especially when I get around other people. It's very easy to like um, back into what do they expect from me, and what's my role, and all that kind of stuff. Because yeah, it's very apparently once you integrate things well enough, unbind well enough, all that becomes effortless too. All that becomes embodied and um, you're not worried about what's going to happen next, even when you're around people, because you're not trying to plan and strategize and fulfilling your roles. It just kind of happens. And if you freak people out, you freak people out. And that's just what happens. And then you move on because it's a fresh new moment. And if somebody comes after you with pitchforks, you know, and that's another fear that that likes to hang on, which is that a lot of the very best people get killed quite young. And and there are other examples of wonderful people living to a wonderfully ripe age, like Thich Nhat Hanh. Um, but I have to let go of that. I don't control it anyway. Like I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and it could be totally meaningless. Or maybe option B is getting assassinated in 10 years and changing the world. I mean, I don't know, like the possibilities are completely infinite either way. There's no guarantee one is going to make me live longer than another. So, it was quite energetic letting go of that fear. It was I could feel it in my core, kind of. I can feel it right now, just kind of under my heart. And last night too, I was really feeling into my heart. So I still have a very dense heart center, and I was just feeling it. I was thinking some kind of judgmental thought that I knew very well is not a kind or reasonable or useful thought, and I could feel it burning in my chest. And not so much burning as like just kind of nauseatingly molten. It's like this lava, like this miasma of like low key lava coming out. And there was kind of a review of all the different times in my life when I've been judgmental or mean. You know, I've been judgmental and I've been mean in my life. I don't like to admit it. I don't like to talk about it. It's true. And as I was feeling my heart, I could see these scenes of ways I had behaved toward others that I'm not proud of. And, I could defend myself. I could say, well, I was doing that because of that trauma, and I was doing that because somebody else did this. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's kind of not the point at this point. At this point, like the buck has to stop somewhere. And either I can either make excuses for my behavior, or I can let the buck stop here and say, yes, that happened to me. Yes, I also did some things that not only hurt other people, but left imprints in my own heart. Why don't I just own up to that? Let the feelings out so that I don't pass the guilt or the trauma. Because that's the pernicious thing about it is your trauma, maybe if you acted out on somebody, then you feel guilt, and that makes you feel even worse, and that makes you maybe act out even worse. And then the next person, because of the way you treated them, they might treat the next person in a bad way, or they might turn it to self-hatred, which also generally doesn't result in the very best behavior. And again, no judgment there, but I've seen it in myself. My self-hatred has never been constructive. And so so it's like, well, those are my options, self-hatred or lashing out. It's like, no, there's another option. And it is humbling and painful, confusing. But ultimately less exhausting than and less painful than every other option. I think I'm lucky that my suffering has been acute enough that I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't suppress it anymore. So, last refuge of the scoundrel, is complete transparency or whatever, as much as you can manage. It's like all other roads have been exhausted. This is all that's left. And in that sense, you can say it's not brave because you're just too miserable otherwise. It's it's ultimately self-preservation. But often, well, let me put it this way. I don't think I could have been able to save myself because I couldn't have let myself care enough. I still have a really hard time accepting love even from myself. And I think if my behavior didn't affect other people, especially my kids, maybe I could have buried this forever. But I have a heart level commitment. I've always had a heart level commitment not to treat any kids the ways that I didn't like being treated as a kid. And that came quite that came into focus quite um, strongly when I actually had kids. Until then, I couldn't muster the. I didn't care enough about myself to save myself. I care enough about my kids to save myself. I care enough about the world to save myself, even though there's still little beliefs or little vasanas hanging on that it's indulgent to try to save yourself or heal yourself. Or if I don't do it perfectly and I waste any time, then I shouldn't be allowed to do it at all because there's so many other productive things I could be doing, supposedly. But I didn't feel like I could do them anyway because I don't know, I was locked in a kind of loop of, some productivity and then distraction and then beating myself up and then some productivity and then distraction and then beating myself up and getting snappish because the whole thing was um, stressing me out. I didn't want to have, I didn't want my kids to have a mom who lived like that. It wasn't always like that. I'm caricaturing and overstating, but it was definitely part of it. Anyway, I wrote to someone. Um, it's been such a roller coaster doing the SAA online retreat on top of the world and then churned under, feeling like I've gone nowhere at all and I'm less enlightened than ever. I finally gave myself permission not to be enlightened, and that was quite a relief. So that means like I think I might have said on the previous video where um expecting myself to already be enlightened and already act in enlightened ways most or all of the time was unrealistic and unhelpful. Because then, but then eventually the mind comes back and says, "That's right, you're not enlightened. You're so, X fill in the not so nice blank." Um, and so on the one hand, like there's no such thing as progress because there's no such thing as time. It's always right here, right now. And yet the mind keeps trying to wrap itself around a paradox it fundamentally cannot. The body keeps bracing itself against the unknown. And yet things are different somehow. Paradox upon paradox. And my friend asked, "Oh, yeah, well, that sounds intense. What's going on?" I said, "What's going on? I have no idea. Less and less and less idea. Somehow that's okay. The seeker is finally so exhausted, like all other roads have been tried and gone nowhere. There's only one place left to go. Right here, right now. Only that." He asked if grief had been a part of it, a sense of disorientation, yet also reorientation. I said, grief has definitely been a part of it. That was the trying to put cat in a carrier feeling, stiff arming reality, trying to hold into something I don't really believe in. You know, some meanness that feels like it's being lost. Me, me dash ness. Some something that feels like it's essential. Some core or some network of nodes of contraction that think when they're lost, I'm lost. When they unbind, I'm gone. And some alien entity is going to take over and I'm going to be a zombie or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's the unknown. Free falling. Biological organisms do not enjoy free falling. I said, stiff arm reality for a while and then total disorientation, full disorientation. What the fuck is orientation? And yet, it's just right here. Whatever the fuck this is, like, it's unknown. You can go back into the mind and be like, well, this wood was manufactured in this, and these blinds were made in 1998, and whatever. Like, that's an option. You can live in your head, or you can just take the inputs here and now. And it's very mysterious. I said, I'm not as griefy anymore, not as afraid. I can't tell you what shifted. I'm sure I didn't do it. Just suddenly something relaxed into, oh, yeah, it's just this. That's okay. I mean, why not? I still have my VR set too, still got a brain. I can play around with it if I want to. Nothing has actually changed other than fixations in my mind and knots in my body that were never mine. So there's nothing to be scared or sad about. And I said, all that said, I might wake up tomorrow in a panic. You never know. You really never, ever know. That's the thing. You're free falling. You don't know. Whatever happens, happens. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever feelings, that's what they are. You can't run from them. You can't hide from them. You can feel another oil slick passing through. But Angela is also right that you develop more capacity. So stuff that would have made me feel like I needed to either distract or, take a day off from life if I could. It's like, oh, there's a sensation I didn't expect. Okay, hello. And I can just stand in the kitchen and let it pass. Yeah, it's definitely energetic. What just stuff is moving right now, and I can try to help it along. But mostly it seems to be doing whatever it's doing, and the best I can do is breathe, have patience, examine beliefs, try to stay out of the way. And things like yoga too, just being with the body, not rushing it. I've always been so amazed by yoga teachers because it's like they kind of step other people through the whole routine and only kind of halfway do it themselves, usually. Um, and I can imagine what patience it takes, not only to be with your body, but to be, I guess, patient as everyone else's bodies are doing what they're doing. It's like there's a lot of executive function at the same time. There needs to be a lot of patience. So yeah, everything is it's going. I wrote, I'm enjoying it too, because he said he's enjoying life more than ever. I'm enjoying it too, even though I had a dream last night that some green goo implanted me with alien worms that I knew would take over my body and my mind. And I was kind of glad. Of course, it's really the conditioning that's the alien worms, but even that somehow was exactly as it should be. And now we have the luck somehow of being able to see past it, get those worms out, and now we can play. Pretty cool.